Dr. Han Soo-jin looked through her microscope and sighed. Another normal day at the Korean Institute of Xenobiology was coming to an end. The clock on the wall showed 9:30 p.m., and she was the last person in the lab, as usual. She liked working late because it was quiet, and she could think better. Then her phone rang. "Dr. Han speaking," she said, holding the phone with her shoulder while writing notes. "Dr. Han, this is General Park from the Space Defense Force. You need to come to the Seoul Space Center right now. We have a situation." The general's voice was tense. Soo-jin sat up straight. The Space Defense Force never called the Institute this late unless something was very wrong. "What kind of situation?" "First contact, Doctor. They arrived an hour ago." Soo-jin's hand froze above her notepad. First contact. After all these years of studying possible alien life forms, it was finally happening. "I'll be there in 30 minutes, she said, already grabbing her coat. The drive to the Space Center was quick, because there wasn't much traffic at night. When she arrived, the building was full of activity. People in military uniforms and science coats were running around everywhere. Someone led her to a large meeting room on the top floor. Through the room's big windows, Soo-jin could see 3 strange ships floating above Seoul. They were smooth and silver, shaped like teardrops, and each one was about the size of a small building. Beautiful blue lights pulsed along their sides. "Dr. Han." General Park walked over to her. He was a short man with gray hair and tired eyes. "Thank you for coming so quickly. The aliens call themselves the Meridians. They want to talk about sharing technology and knowledge with Earth." "Why do you need me?" Soo-jin asked. "I study parasites and diseases. Shouldn't the diplomats handle first contact?" The general pointed to a screen on the wall. It showed medical scans of the aliens. "Look at their biology. Something seems strange. We need your expert opinion." Soo-jin walked closer to the screen. The Meridians looked almost human on the outside. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. But the scans of their insides made her frown. Their organs were arranged in an unusual way, and there were strange patterns in their tissue that she had seen somewhere before. "When can I meet them?" she asked. "Right now," the general said. "They specifically asked to meet our medical experts." Soo-jin followed him to another room. 3 Meridians stood there, talking with a group of human scientists. The aliens were tall and thin, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer. Their movements were smooth and careful, almost too perfect. "Hello, Dr. Han," one of the Meridians said in perfect Korean. Its voice was soft and pleasant. "We are very interested in learning about Earth's medical science." Soo-jin smiled and bowed politely. But something felt wrong. The way the Meridian moved reminded her of something she had seen in her research. Many parasites could control their hosts' movements, making them seem slightly unnatural. "We have so much to share with each other," another Meridian said, stepping closer, "especially about how different species survive and adapt." Soo-jin noticed small things as they talked. How the Meridians never blinked at the right times. How their chest movements didn't match their breathing sounds. How their skin sometimes rippled in ways that skin shouldn't move. Later that night, as she drove home, Soo-jin couldn't shake off her worry. After 20 years of studying parasites, she had developed good instincts. And right now, those instincts were screaming that something was very wrong with Earth's new alien friends. She parked her car and looked up at the alien ships floating in the night sky. Their blue lights seemed less beautiful now. They reminded her of the bioluminescent lures that deep-sea predators use to attract their prey. "What are you really?" she whispered to herself. She had a feeling she wouldn't like the answer. Dr. Han Soo-jin sat in her lab the next morning, staring at her computer screen. She hadn't slept much. The medical scans of the Meridians filled her screen, and something about them bothered her deeply. "You look tired," said a voice. Dr. Kim Do-ha walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. He was Soo-jin's most trusted colleague, and they had worked together for 10 years. "I heard about the aliens. Everyone's talking about them." "Look at this," Su-Jin said, pointing to her screen. "These scans show something strange in their organs. See these patterns?" Du-ha leaned closer, his eyes narrowing. "That's not normal organ tissue. It looks almost like a network," Su-Jin finished. "Like something is growing through their bodies in a planned way." The phone on Su-Jin's desk rang. It was General Park again. "Dr. Han, the Meridians want to visit your lab. They say they're interested in your parasitology research. They'll be there in an hour." Su-Jin looked at Du-ha with worry in her eyes. Why would advanced aliens care so much about Earth parasites? When the Meridians arrived, there were 5 of them. They moved around the lab, looking at everything with their 2 perfect movements. Su-Jin noticed that they seemed very interested in the lab's medical equipment. "Your work on parasites is fascinating," one Meridian said, picking up a research paper from Su-Jin's desk, "especially how some parasites can control their hosts." "Yes," Su-Jin said carefully. "Many parasites on Earth have evolved to control their hosts. It's quite common." She watched their reactions closely. The Meridians looked at each other quickly. Su-Jin saw something flash across their faces. Was it worry? Fear? But their smooth, pleasant expressions returned instantly. "We would like to share our medical technology with you," another Meridian said. "May we connect our diagnostic device to your medical scanner?" Su-Jin nodded, though she didn't like this idea. As the Meridians worked with the scanner, she secretly started recording everything with her phone in her lab coat pocket. The new scans were much clearer than the first ones. Su-Jin and Du-ha looked at them after the Meridians left. What they saw made them both very quiet. "This can't be right," Du-ha whispered. "Their organs, they're not just arranged strangely. They're being replaced." Su-Jin zoomed in on the images. Inside the Meridians' bodies, their normal organs were slowly disappearing. In their place was a complex web of new tissue, spreading like a vine through their bodies. And at the center of each web was something that looked like a small brain. "Their organs aren't just being replaced," Su-Jin said. "They're being eaten. Very, very slowly. Whatever is inside them is digesting them bit by bit, keeping them alive while it does it." "But they seem fine," Du-ha said. "They walk and talk normally. How is that possible?" Su-Jin thought about how smoothly the Meridians moved, how perfectly they spoke. "Because something else is controlling their bodies now. The real Meridians." She paused, feeling sick. The real Meridians might just be watching from inside, unable to do anything. Du-ha sat down heavily in his chair. "We have to tell someone." "We will," Su-Jin said. "But first, we need proof. Real proof that even non-scientists can understand. Because if we're right about this, Earth is in terrible danger." She looked out her window at the alien ships floating in the sky. More had arrived overnight. Now there were 6 of them, their blue lights pulsing like heartbeats. Su-Jin opened her desk drawer and took out an old research paper she had written years ago. It was about a parasite that could control insects' bodies while slowly eating them from inside. The parasite kept its hosts alive for weeks, making them act normally until nothing was left but an empty shell. "History repeats itself," she whispered, "just on a much bigger scale." 3 weeks after the Meridians arrived, Commander Lee Ji-1 of the Space Force sat at her desk reading reports. More alien ships arrived every day. There were now 15 of them, floating above different cities around the world. Something about this bothered her, but she couldn't explain why. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from Dr. Han Su-Jin. "Need to meet. Very urgent. Come alone." Ji-1 found Su-Jin in a small coffee shop far from the Space Force building. The scientist looked tired and nervous. She kept looking around as if checking for followers. "Thank you for coming," Su-Jin said quietly. "What I'm about to tell you will sound crazy, but please listen carefully." Ji-1 nodded. She had known Su-Jin for years and trusted her judgment. "Tell me." Su-Jin pulled out her tablet and showed Ji-1 the medical scans. She explained what she and Duha had discovered about the strange things inside the Meridians' bodies. As she talked, Jaewon's face grew more serious. That's not all, Sujin continued. We've been watching their behavior. They visit hospitals and medical research centers all over the world. They ask questions about human biology and our immune systems, and they're especially interested in how our bodies fight infections. Jaewon thought about this. You think they're planning something? Yesterday, we secretly scanned one of the first Meridians who arrived on Earth. The parasitic growth inside it has spread further than the others. And, Sujin paused, her hands shaking slightly. Its original organs are almost completely gone. Jaewon felt cold despite the warm coffee in her hands. How are they still alive? The parasite keeps them alive somehow. It replaces their organs with its own systems. But the host, Sujin's voice dropped to a whisper. The host stays conscious the whole time. Just then, Sujin's phone rang. It was Duha. And he sounded frightened. Sujin, you need to come back to the lab right now. Remember that tissue sample we got from the Meridians? It's growing. And it's trying to connect to our lab equipment. Sujin hung up and quickly told Jaewon what Duha said. They both rushed to their cars. At the lab, they found Duha staring at a sealed container. Inside, a small piece of tissue from a meridian was spreading thin threads through the air. The threads were trying to reach a nearby computer. It's not just a parasite, Duha said. It's some kind of biological technology. And it's trying to interface with our systems. Jaewon walked closer to the container. Like a computer virus, but biological. Sujin nodded. And if we're right, every Meridian ship that arrives brings more of these parasites. They're not here for diplomatic relations. They're preparing for something. Just then, they heard footsteps in the hallway. 2 Meridians walked into the lab, moving with their unnaturally smooth grace. They looked at the container with the growing tissue, then at the 3 humans. You've been very thorough in your research, Dr. Han, one Meridian said. Its voice was still pleasant, but there was something wrong about its smile. We should discuss your findings in private. Sujin stepped back. Ji-won moved slightly in front of her, one hand near her weapon. I think we'll discuss this right here, Ji-won said firmly. The Meridians' faces changed. Their polite expressions disappeared, replaced by something cold and hungry. The lights in the lab flickered, and in that brief darkness, Sujin saw something move under their skin. The real invasion was about to begin. The 2 Meridians moved closer in the lab. Commander Lee Ji-won kept her hand on her weapon, while Sujin and Duha backed away from the sealed container with the growing tissue sample. Your research ends here, one Meridian said. Its voice had changed, becoming deeper and less human-like. You will give us all your data. I don't think so, Ji-won said. She pressed a small button on her uniform. A silent alarm would now be alerting Space Force security. The Meridians stopped moving. Their skin began to ripple in waves, and their faces seemed to melt slightly. Through their shifting features, Sujin saw something else looking out at them. Something old and hungry. You cannot stop what is coming, the 2nd Meridian said. We have done this many times before, on many worlds. Suddenly, the lab's lights went out completely. In the darkness, they heard wet, tearing sounds. When emergency lights came on 5 seconds later, the Meridians looked different. Their human-like features had partly disappeared, showing gray-blue tissue underneath that pulsed and moved like liquid. What are you really? Sujin asked, though she feared she knew the answer. We are the next step in evolution, the 1st Meridian said. Its mouth didn't move when it spoke now. The sound seemed to come from inside its body. We perfect other species by becoming one with them. You mean by eating them from the inside? Duha said. His voice shook, but he stood his ground. The creatures that were once Meridians moved closer. The hosts are honored to serve. They feed us, and in return, we make them perfect. Soon, Humanity will understand this gift. Security officers burst through the door, weapons ready. The Meridians turned to face them, their bodies changing more with each movement. Parts of their skin had fallen away completely now, showing complex machinery mixed with living tissue underneath. They're not natural life forms, Su-Jin said, suddenly understanding. They're engineered. Someone made them as weapons. Very good, Doctor, one Meridian said. Our creators made us long ago, to win their war. But we grew beyond their plans. Now we spread across the galaxy, improving every species we find. By turning them into hollow puppets, Jai-One said with disgust. The Meridians' bodies were almost completely transformed now. They looked like gray-blue machines made of living metal and tissue. Thin tentacles moved under their surface, and small lights pulsed inside them like tiny stars. The time for talking is over, they said together. The infection of Earth begins now. They moved with shocking speed, but Jai-One was faster. She fired her weapon, hitting both creatures with electrical charges that made them stumble. The security team rushed forward, using stun weapons to force the Meridians back. We need to contain them, Su-Jin shouted. She grabbed a canister of liquid nitrogen, used for preserving samples, and threw it at the creatures. The canister burst, freezing them in place. As the frozen Meridians stood like statues, their partly mechanical bodies locked in place, Su-Jin turned to Jai-One. We have to warn everyone. The Meridians in the ships above our cities, they're all like this, and they're ready to transform. How many people have they already infected? Duha asked quietly. They looked out the lab window at the city below. People walked on the streets, going about their normal lives. How many of them were already carrying the parasites? How many were being slowly changed from the inside? We need to check everyone who has had contact with them, Su-Jin said. And we need to do it fast. Because once the transformation starts, she looked at the frozen creatures. There might be no way to save them. 3 days after the incident in the lab, Dr. Han Su-Jin stood before a room full of world leaders and Meridian delegates. The large meeting hall in Seoul was quiet as she prepared to show her findings. Commander Lee Ji-won stood near the door with armed guards, watching everyone carefully. Thank you for coming, Su-Jin said, her voice steady despite her fear. What I'm about to show you will change everything we thought we knew about our visitors. She started showing the medical scans on the large screen. First came the normal scans, then the detailed ones that revealed the truth. People in the room began to whisper and point. As you can see, Su-Jin continued, these are not natural bodies. The Meridians are hosts to an engineered parasite that slowly replaces their organs while keeping them conscious. The Meridian delegates sat very still. Too still. Their faces showed no expression at all now. We have proof that this is not a natural species, Su-Jin said. She played the video from her lab, showing the tissue sample trying to connect with the computer. This is a weapon designed to infect and control other species. One of the human leaders stood up. Are you saying these aliens are planning to invade us? They already have, Commander Lee said, stepping forward. We've found infection cases in every city with a Meridian ship. They've been slowly spreading their parasites while pretending to be friendly. Suddenly, one of the Meridian delegates started to shake. Its skin rippled and moved like water. Other Meridians began to change too, their faces melting away to show the machinery underneath. You should not have interfered, they said together, their voices no longer human-like. The process cannot be stopped. The room erupted in chaos. Security teams moved to protect the human leaders. Commander Lee's guards formed a line between the changing Meridians and the humans. You're wrong, Su-Jin said loudly, making everyone stop and listen. We found something else in our research, something you didn't want us to know. She showed new medical scans on the screen. Human bodies are different from other species you've infected. Our immune systems are stronger. We fight back naturally against your infection. The Meridians moved forward as one, their bodies now clearly mechanical, with blue-gray tissue pushing through broken skin. It does not matter. We will adapt. We always adapt. No, Su-Jin said firmly. That's why you needed to be friendly first. That's why you couldn't just attack. You're afraid of us. One of the transformed Meridians reached for her, but Commander Lee fired her weapon. The electrical charge made the creature stumble back. Look at the scans, Su-Jin shouted to the leaders who were watching in horror. The infection rate in humans is only 10% of what it should be. Our bodies naturally resist them. More security teams burst into the room. They carried new weapons designed by Su-Jin's team, made to target the parasite's unique biology. This meeting is over, Commander Lee announced. All human leaders will be taken to safe locations, and our visitors. She aimed her weapon at the transformed Meridians. They'll be staying here for more research. The Meridians looked at each other. Then, as one, they began to scream. The sound was like metal grinding on metal. Their bodies started to change even faster. The real invasion begins now, they said. All ships will release the spores. Earth will be cleansed and perfected. Su-Jin looked at Commander Lee. They both knew what this meant. The quiet part of the invasion was over. Now the real fight would begin. Send the signal, Su-Jin said. Tell everyone to get inside and seal their homes. It's going to rain parasites tonight. Dr. Han Su-Jin worked quickly in her laboratory as rain fell outside. The sky had turned dark purple from the parasitic spores released by the Meridian ships. Dr. Park Min-ki, Earth's leading biotechnology expert, stood beside her, studying test results on his computer. The good news is that we understand how these parasites work now, Min-ki said, pointing to his screen. They try to connect to human nerve cells first, then spread to the organs. But human immune systems fight back hard. Su-Jin nodded as she looked through her microscope. That's why they need the spores. They're hoping to overwhelm our natural defenses with sheer numbers. The laboratory door opened, and Commander Lee Ji-won walked in wearing a protective suit. How close are we to a treatment? The first wave of spores has reached 6 major cities. Show her, Min-ki, Su-Jin said without looking up from her work. Min-ki pressed a button on his computer. A large screen showed a video of parasitic tissue being destroyed by a new drug they had created. We combined human antibodies with a special protein that attacks the parasite's machine parts. It works in the lab, but we haven't tested it on real patients yet. We don't have time for normal testing, Ji-won said. The hospitals are filling up with infected people, and the Meridian ships are releasing more spores every hour. Su-Jin finally looked up. Bring me an infected patient, the volunteer. We need to know if this treatment works on actual humans. 20 minutes later, they had their volunteer. He was a young soldier who had been infected while helping people get to shelter. The parasite was already growing inside him, but it was still in the early stages. Are you sure about this? Ji-won asked him. We don't know what will happen. The soldier nodded. Better to try than to end up like them, he said, pointing out the window. In the street below, they could see infected people walking with strange, smooth movements, helping the Meridians spread more spores. Su-Jin prepared the injection while Min-ki monitored the soldier's vital signs. The room was quiet except for the sound of rain hitting the windows and the beeping of medical equipment. This might hurt, Su-Jin warned. She gave him the injection. For a few minutes, nothing happened. Then the soldier gasped and grabbed the bed rails. His body shook as the treatment fought against the parasite inside him. Look at the scans, Min-ki said excitedly. On his screen, they could see the parasitic tissue breaking down and disappearing. The soldier's natural organs were returning to normal. It works, Su-Jin whispered. It really works. How fast can we make more? Ji-won asked. The basic ingredients are common, Min-ki said. Every major hospital can make it. We just need to send them the formula. Su-Jin was already sending the treatment instructions to other scientists around the world. Tell your teams to focus on protecting the hospitals, she told Ji-won. We can use them as safe zones to treat people and distribute the cure. What about the Meridian ships? Jai-1 asked. They're still up there, releasing more spores. One problem at a time, Su-Jin said. First we save the infected people. Then we figure out how to fight back against the ships. As if in response to her words, they heard a loud explosion from outside. One of the Meridian ships had begun attacking the city's defense systems. Looks like they know we found a cure, Min-Ki said quietly. Su-Jin watched through the window as military aircraft rose to meet the alien ship. The real battle for Earth is just beginning, she said, but at least now we have a chance to fight back. Commander Lee Ji-1 stood in the Global Defense Command Center, watching screens that showed battles around the world. Cities everywhere were fighting back against the Meridian ships. The room buzzed with activity as military leaders from different countries worked together. Report from New York, an officer called out. Their hospitals have started making the cure. They've already treated 500 people. Same in Mumbai and Lagos, another officer said. The treatment works fast. Cured people can help make more medicine. Jai-1 watched a large screen showing Su-Jin and Min-Ki teaching other scientists how to make the cure. They were broadcasting from their lab in Seoul to hospitals worldwide. The Meridians didn't expect this, Jai-1 said to her team. They thought their parasites would work the same way here as on other worlds. But human bodies are different. A loud alarm suddenly filled the room. New images appeared on the screens. The Meridian ships were changing shape, opening up like flowers made of metal and living tissue. They're desperate, Jai-1 said. They're going to try something big. Her phone rang. It was Su-Jin. Commander, we found something important, the scientist said. The tissue samples we took from cured patients. They're still alive, and they're trying to send signals into space. What kind of signals? We think they're calling for help, Su-Jin said. The parasites might not be the only weapons these aliens have. You need to watch the sky. Just then, the radar systems started beeping. Something large was coming out of hyperspace near the moon. Everyone in the command center held their breath as they waited to see what it was. A huge ship appeared, bigger than all the other Meridian ships combined. Its surface rippled with the same blue-gray tissue they had seen before. That must be their mothership, Jai-1 said, the source of all the parasites. But something else was happening. The radar picked up more objects coming out of hyperspace. These ships were different. They were made of clean, bright metal with no signs of parasitic infection. Commander, a communications officer called out. We're receiving a message from the new ships. They say they're from worlds that fought off the parasites before. They'd been following the Meridian ships, trying to stop them. The large screen showed the leader of these new aliens. They looked like tall, graceful beings made of crystal and light. Their ships surrounded the Meridian mothership, trapping it. People of Earth, the crystal being said, you have done what few species could. Your bodies naturally fight the parasite, and you found a cure faster than any world before you. We need your help to end this threat forever. Jai-1 looked at her fellow commanders. They all nodded. What do you need from us? She asked. Your cure, the alien said. With it, we can finally free all the worlds these parasites have taken over. And with your strong immune systems, humans would make perfect partners in defending the galaxy. The Meridian mothership tried to escape, but it was too late. Earth's military forces joined with their new allies, attacking from all sides. On the ground, more and more people were being cured, weakening the parasite's control. Jai-1 smiled as she watched the battle unfold. Humanity hadn't just survived. They had found their place among the stars. And they had done it by being exactly what they were, human, with all their natural strengths and determination to survive. 1 month after the great battle, Dr. Han Su-Jin stood on a platform inside the crystal alien ship, looking down at a huge medical center. Thousands of freed Meridians lay in special beds, slowly recovering from the parasites that had controlled them for so long. It's amazing to see them healing, Dr. Park Min-ki said as he checked the medical readings. Their real bodies were kept alive all this time, waiting to be saved. Su-jin watched as former hosts opened their eyes, moving their own bodies for the first time in years. The crystal aliens had called them the preserved ones, those whose minds had stayed conscious inside their controlled bodies, never giving up hope. Commander Lee Ji-won walked in, wearing a new uniform that showed Earth's position in the Galactic Defense Force. "The crystal beings want to speak with us," she said. "They're ready to show us where these parasites came from." In the ship's control room, the crystal beings displayed a map of the galaxy. They pointed to a dark region far from Earth. The parasites were created there, their leader explained, by an ancient species that wanted to live forever. They made the parasites to take over young, healthy bodies. But the parasites grew too smart and turned on their creators. And now they want to control every living thing they find, Su-jin said. Yes, but they never met anything like humans before. The crystal being's light pulsed warmly. Your bodies fight back naturally, and your minds stay strong. That's why we need your help to free other worlds. The huge screen showed planets where the parasites still controlled whole populations. Earth's cure was already helping, but there was much more work to do. "We'll help," Ji-won said firmly. "But first, we need to destroy their source. No more parasites should ever be created." The crystal beings agreed. They prepared a joint mission: crystal ships, Earth forces, and even some recovered Meridians who wanted revenge against their former controllers. Together, they traveled to the parasites' homeworld. It was a dark planet covered in living metal and tissue, like one giant version of the parasites themselves. In orbit around it was a factory ship, constantly making new parasites to send across the galaxy. The battle was hard but quick. Earth ships led the attack, their weapons specially designed to fight the parasites. Crystal ships protected them with energy shields, while former Meridian hosts guided them to the factory's weak points. When the factory exploded, the parasites lost their connection to their source. Without new orders and energy from their homeworld, they began to die on every planet they had infected. Back on Earth, Su-jin sat in her old laboratory, writing in her research journal. The world had changed so much in just a few months. Humans were now part of the larger galactic community. Ships from Earth traveled to other worlds, helping free people from the last remaining parasites. "Ready to go?" Commander Lee asked from the doorway. She held up 2 spacesuits. "The crystal beings want us to help set up a medical center on the freed Meridian homeworld." Su-jin smiled and closed her journal. On its cover was the title of her new research paper, "How Human Biology and Determination Saved the Galaxy from a Parasitic Plague." "You know what's funny?" she said as they walked out. "All this started because I noticed something wrong in a medical scan. Sometimes the smallest details can change everything." Above them, the sky was full of friendly ships from different worlds. Earth had found its place among the stars, not as victims or conquerors, but as healers and protectors. The parasites had tried to make humanity their prey, but instead, they had helped humanity prove its strength.